Hello, welcome everyone to the Stanford MBA admissions panel on your journey from Stanford to Europe. My name is Lisa Gianangeli, and I'm a director of MBA admissions as well as an alumna of the program. And I'm joined today by some of my fellow alumni who will share some of their experiences, both at Stanford and now working and living in Europe. You'll see a couple of polls on your screen throughout today's presentation. We'd really appreciate your input there. And if at any point you have a question that you would like to ask our panelists later on, please feel free to pop that in the Q&A box. So just to understand a little bit about what we will cover in today's event. Really, our aim is to allow you an opportunity to engage with our community and to learn a little bit more about the Stanford GSB experience, and then also some of the experiences of our alumni who are now currently living and working in Europe. I'll give a super brief introduction to our global community. You'll have an opportunity to meet our panelists. I'll start us off with some Q&A, and then again, we really want to hear your questions. So at any point, feel free to type your question in to that Q&A box. If you see a question that someone else has asked that you particularly like, you can click on that thumbs up symbol and that'll vote that question up to the top. And we'll try to address as many questions as we can in our 55 minutes together today. So where will your journey take you? Well, a Stanford MBA can really take you almost anywhere. It's interesting, as students are arriving to Stanford, again, they're coming from all around the world. And we see a number of regional clubs on campus that form. And every year there's a robust group that's in the Europe Club on campus. Similarly, after you graduate, this journey can take you, again, almost anywhere you want to go. We have approximately 60 regional alumni clubs all around the world, 45 of which are outside of the United States. There are about 30,000 GSB alumni globally, and a much, much broader Stanford University network all around the world that you can absolutely tap into at any point, personally or professionally. But let's take an opportunity now to meet some of our panelists. So we have a wonderful group today of alumni who are currently living and working in Europe. It'd be great if each of our alums could just briefly introduce yourselves. We'll go in the order that we see here on the slides. And Christina, we'll start with you.
Sorry. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Cristina Lamarca. I graduated in summer 18. I currently live in London, where I work at Deliverr in a commercial function. Prior to going to Stanford, I was at McKinsey & Company, focusing mostly on food and beverage. That's always been a passion of mine. And in 2019, I moved from New York to London. So nice to meet you all.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stefan Hildebrand. I graduated in 2016, as you can see there. I'm originally from Germany and lived in the US for a combined 17 years. So I was in the US before Stanford MBA. I worked in New York and had started a commercial bakery business there that we then sold and moved back to Germany right after the MBA.
And Sita, I know, is joining us. Yes.
Yeah. Hi guys. Nice to virtually meet all of you. My name is Sita. I'm originally from Austria. Have been abroad for 8 years. Part of that was obviously my time at the GSB, and right after the GSB, took my then American boyfriend, now husband, to London, and then now back to Austria. Professionally, I was in telco before, wanted to do something with an impact on climate change, did a lot of energy classes, renewable energy classes at the GSB, and then went into sustainable mobility, and I'm now working with electric vehicles.
Hi all, here's Patricia. I'm MBA 2012. I'm an engineer's education, originally from Spain. Before the MBA, I worked in consulting, also McKinsey, Madrid office. And after the MBA, I moved to Germany directly, worked with the European Central Bank since then for the last 8 years in different functions, now taking care of distributing our banknotes to all of you, or all of those of you who are in Europe. And very happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. Great to virtually meet everyone. My name is Maxim, and I graduated from Stanford 15 years ago, a long time ago. Prior to the university, I worked in private equity as well as corporate development in telecoms. And after graduation, I think I have taken 3 roles. First of all, I was the CEO of print and press distribution company. Then I headed the media holding company in Russia. And I think for the over 7 years, I'm one of the shareholders and the founder of Tsian Group, which is a real estate marketplace, like classifieds and marketplace, something like Zillow.com or Rightmove or Immobilier and Scout24 for the European counterparts. Great to answer your questions today.
Great, thank you all. So I'll start us off with some questions for our panelists, but again, we really also want to hear from you, our attendees. So any questions that you have for our panelists, please feel free to put those in the Q&A box and we'll get to those in just a few minutes. So this first question is really for any of our panelists, anyone who wants to chime in, but why did you decide to pursue an MBA and why specifically at Stanford?
So for me, it was very obvious. I'm engineer's education, and I landed into consulting for random reasons. So I always felt like I didn't really have the background knowledge I needed. So I was learning on the job the whole time, which was fun and was interesting, but I felt like I needed to sort of build up my skills. So an MBA was clear. Why Stanford? For me, Stanford is very special in the sense that it allows cross-disciplinary training and education, and for me this was very important. So as an engineer who was working in sort of business world, I always felt like one can add value and innovate when you're in the middle of 2 disciplines, and I think Stanford does a great job at allowing that also throughout the MBA program. Being on campus is one thing, and being able to take classes across the street is even better. So for me the decision was very clear from the beginning because of that.
Maxim, did you want to talk about why you decided to do an MBA and why Stanford?
Yeah, I think it was very interesting for me because the reason I decided to join Stanford and the reason why I changed my career afterwards are totally different. So I applied and I got admitted to Stanford with the idea of becoming a partner in private equity and venture capital fund. And obviously Stanford is the ultimate university for that, I would say. So actually, I think there were 2 schools that were really important for such a career, Stanford and the other school. And actually, it was clear choice for me to go to Stanford on that. Having said that, over the course of 2 years, I actually decided to change my kind of profession. I spent some internship working for a VC company in Silicon Valley and decided that it's a great job. I would love to do it, maybe 20 or 30 years after graduation, but not just after the graduation. So, so I decided that it's much more fun, and I think it's much more natural for me to manage people rather than Excel sheets and PowerPoints. So I decided that I would go for any job which takes takes responsibility and manage a lot of people. That's what I did actually at the end of the day.
Great. This next question I'll direct toward Stefan and Maxim, but how have you connected with or leveraged the alumni community in Europe, either personally speaking or professionally speaking?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. I decided to move to Germany with my then pregnant wife, American wife. Very unsure how that move would go for the 2 of us, both personally and professionally. And in the second year, there's a big push to kind of like start connecting with alumni. I think it was a really good starting point is the alumni database that I actually do use quite frequently. And I just started searching, for people in Germany, for people in Munich specifically, because we were going to move to Munich at that point. And I remember, and this is a true story. I know it sounds made up, but it really is a true story. I reached out to a handful of people in Munich, and then one of them, well, everybody, kind of emailed back right away. But one of them said, "Hey, that's amazing that you're moving to Munich. Would you be at all interested in me hosting a dinner so that you can get to know a whole bunch of alumni at the same time?" And I thought that was like, I had no idea where this was coming from. I didn't know him, and he said, "Yeah, I'd be happy to do it." So literally after 4 weeks of being in Germany, there was a dinner at somebody's house. I think there were like 25 people there or something. And it was an amazing start for me, right? Not knowing a whole lot of people, because I had never lived in Munich. I grew up in Stuttgart, but I was gone for so many years. And it was an amazing introduction into the kind of like that Stanford. It really is like a family in Munich, right? This is not New York or San Francisco where there's just hundreds of alumni. There's clearly a more limited amount of them. But they were super open, they helped right away. I mean, I've gotten investors through them. A bunch of them invested in our business. I've nothing but good things to say, right? Again, it's a smaller network than you will get from some of the other programs in Europe, obviously, just by the sheer size of the class and the geographic location. But the accessibility and the willingness to help is very, very high.
Maxime, would you like to share your experiences connecting with alumni?
I think I'll give 3 examples of my personal story. First is about not professional rather than like personal. I totally echo Stefan's point on the really close community in European countries and like more family style kind of feeling, I would say. We know each of Stanford GSB graduates knows each other quite well, and like we get together with the families, and like we can go fishing together, we can go and travel. And so it really feels like similar culture and similar values, which are really important, as well as everyone is so kind of open to share what he or she has with the rest of the community, of GSB community here in Moscow. And I also like traveling around the globe before coronavirus came about. And actually, it's really great to send an email to any of my classmates and any country in the world, actually, and get the best experience within that country, both from a professional and from personal viewpoint. And on the career-wise, GSB alumni helped me a lot. First, I got my first CEO position through GSB network, and definitely it is one of the greatest opportunities that alumni have got after graduation. And obviously it is due to the fact that we all share the same experience, but the idea that actually literally within one day everyone answers your email because you also graduated from GSB, it's what I have experienced a lot. And for example, my current co-partners at CEAN, it's internet real estate marketplace, and they are GSBs as well. So they raised over $1 billion fund from like JP Morgan, European pension funds, etc. And they were quite. It was very easy for us to close that deal, basically to bring investments to CEAN when we decided to raise new money, because I mean they think the same way. They also kind of share the idea of how to build business together. And I think over the course of 7 years, I truly feel that we are like-minded. We share the same ideas, and obviously we have some arguments, but we understand how to resolve them in a professional manner. And that's definitely another really important angle to Stanford community. Thank you.
Sita, I'm actually going to cold call you. I've heard you talk in the past about your Stanford GSV Tribe. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, happy to. So this is a post-graduation development. Actually, Stefan and I are in the same tribe, if I may share that much. So we were a bunch of people who were going to move away from California and more specifically to Europe towards the end of our time at the GSB. We knew that we were going to go directly to Europe, different countries, and we really wanted to stay connected to sort of the school, the thinking, that sort of cultural aspect that Maxime was just talking about. And we just started a group of initially, I think we had 3 tribes, sort of LATAM, US, and Europe, 10 people each. And we're still going strong. 5 years later, we're basically meeting up about every quarter. Used to be in person. Now we've obviously switched to virtual meetings. And it's just a great way to, spend a good chunk of time together. We usually do like either a full weekend or a longer workshop session where we just kind of share personal or professional issues we're struggling with or things that we want, our GSB colleagues' input on. And really depending on what people need, if they need coaching, if they need support, whatever it is, we try to help each other out and kind of bring that GSB spirit into our lives. It's been such an enriching experience. I'm very, very thankful for it. Takes a lot of so you have to really stick with it, and everybody really needs to get a lot of value out of it because everybody obviously is starting families and businesses and has a lot of different priorities, but people have really made it a priority, and that's been great.
Great, thanks for sharing. This next question I'll direct to Patricia and Sita. Can you talk a little bit more about how you made that transition from the GSB to Europe and sort of what sorts of things were most helpful? Was it alumni connections, or did you do a summer internship or a global study trip in Europe? Did you do class projects with European companies? Was it Career Management Center report? How was your path, and what did you find most helpful in making that transition? Maybe Patricia, starting with you.
So from my side, I have a little bit of a special career in the sense that after Stanford, I went to a public institution, and this was something that I wanted to do. And I was very clear I wanted to do already from the start. So I had to figure a little bit my way out. I got a lot of support from the Career Management Center. We had a special person assigned to international students back then. I don't know if it's still the case. And she discussed with us in terms of what we wanted to do, or at least with me, what I wanted to do. What is it exactly that I wanted? I mean, public institutions is a very open domain. So was it in Europe? Was it not? What was it that was important for me, and really going to the core? I also leveraged, after understanding what is it exactly that I want, I leveraged a lot on the alumni database, Stefan was mentioning. So really looking through the database, looking for people who had done similar things like me, also in Europe, and just reaching out, getting an answer immediately, having phone calls, sort of half hour chat, just understanding how they had done it, what they liked, what they didn't like, what worked well, what didn't work so well, and just learning from those experiences, and then starting my own sort of reach out. So I reached out a lot within my 2 years. I would say not only Europe, actually, because this was not so clear from the beginning. So I did also explore other options, South America, for example, and also the US. But I think a lot of the process is really looking or seeing it for yourself. So really talking to the companies, talking to the people, going to their open days or to their interview days, having a chat, seeing if it fits with you or if it doesn't, and just sort of doing that trial. And Stanford supported me a lot in that process, in really establishing those individual contacts to the people that I wanted, to the industries and the jobs that I thought could be interesting for me. And sort of going through that process throughout the 2 years until I found my way and the place where I wanted to be, and where I'm actually now for the last 9 years almost now. So it was a pretty nice fit in the end. But as I said, a very tailored approach. This is what I liked and I valued a lot. It was not about what I should do or what I was supposed to do, but what I wanted to do, me, myself, as Patricia. And this is for me was a very, very, very valued support that I got from Stanford.
And Sita.
Yeah. I don't know if my video is still working. You guys are all frozen for me, but I'll just keep talking. So yeah, I very similar and still different to Patricia, I would say. Also a very entrepreneurial approach, very many different paths that I used. I actually started using the network before the GSB. I encourage all of you guys to think about the time that you also still have before you start your MBA. I happened to be in Berlin when some alum called me to congratulate me on getting an offer from the GSB, and I ended up actually doing an internship with his company before I actually moved to California. So that was interesting. I definitely also did the internship thing. I actually did 2 internships in my MBA summer, which is kind of unusual. I did one in San Francisco at a startup and one in consulting in Europe to sort of keep my options open. Did get an offer to return so sort of that sort of safety thing was kind of nice to know that there is also the sort of more consulting and corporate path that you can follow. I did do a class research sort of project, and I also did a lot of alum reach outs, and then actually took the spring break to go to London, which was my sort of destination I was looking for. So all of these things, and then in the end, the job that I actually ended up taking came from a sort of different US schools. Mailing lists where sort of the different marketing clubs were sending each other opportunities that obviously I wouldn't have gotten if I wasn't at one of those schools. And yeah, just hit it off with the people at the company. So yeah, any of those different things could have worked. Yeah,
Great.
definitely encourage you to look at the time before your MBA.
Good advice. This next question I'll direct to Christina and Stefan. How do you think a Stanford MBA differentiates you in the European marketplace, or maybe just even changes your approach to how you solve problems or see opportunities? Christina, maybe starting with you.
Yeah, sure. So I work at Deliveroo and joined about 6 months ago. And one thing that I noticed as soon as I started obviously meeting people was that, there's a big share of leadership that actually has a Stanford MBA. And, obviously some are more senior alumni than others, but it was pretty sort of like interesting for me to notice how, coming from the US where it's so easy to find a Stanford MBA, I landed on this company and then there they were. And even when I was looking at other options, then Deliveroo, was always through Stanford alumni who ended up also having a lot of leadership positions there. So, I think that obviously sort of was encouraging as I was looking for new opportunities in Europe. And then in terms of how not maybe differentiates you, but how does a Stanford MBA shape the way you think about your job or issues? I think, something that I retained from a lot of the classes that I took was sort of always going back to your aspiration of what leader you want to be. And so a lot of the decisions that I take in my day-to-day, whether it's with restaurant partners working at Deliveroo or it's with my own employees, it's really trying to go back to the set of principles that I think Stanford really helped me tease out over those 2 years.
Great. And Stefan, how do you think the Stanford MBA differentiates you or how you approach things?
I think there's 2 elements. I think there's the kind of general interest from people in Europe in Silicon Valley. And I think Maxim mentioned earlier, right, that Stanford is kind of at the epicenter of it. So that's a given, but that does make you I don't want to say a desirable person, but I have a lot of meetings where people are super curious about Silicon Valley and different approaches to things. And it's a very good starting point, if you're trying to connect with somebody that you might not otherwise, be able to get in touch with or something like that. That kind of general, hi, let's talk about Silicon Valley and what I learned there and what I saw there is always a really, really good starting point. And it's something that people are genuinely interested in. The other thing to me is I think it's more of a personal thing. I was always under the impression before the MBA that I could learn hard skills through like many, different avenues. And I really focus on soft skill development at Stanford. And I think Stanford itself pushes you in that direction a lot. But that was super important to me. And I think that's a very big differentiating factor from what I can tell to other MBA programs as well. And again, I obviously didn't attend those, but just from talking to a lot of alumni, I certainly have a very different approach to kind of like leadership, as Christina mentioned just now. It's like a very kind of like, let's get it behind a shared vision, let's do it together. I think I'm much more aware of how I come across to others than I was in the past. I never really thought about it, because nobody ever told me that I should, quite frankly. And, there's a lot of like things and, kind of like also this Silicon Valley approach of that it's okay to fail, that we've definitely implemented in our company, and we're not worried about it. And I think it might be different in other European countries, but in Germany, there's certainly a stigma, a very negative stigma around failure. And we've made it completely okay, obviously under the right circumstances. And that's helped us tremendously. We've been able to achieve things that I don't think we would have with another culture.
Great. This next question I'll pose to Sita and Christina. Any favorite GSB courses or experiences or resources that you continue to leverage today? Sita, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah. Very diverse set of classes. It's always the classes that you can never know which ones it will come in handy 10 years after the fact. It's the weird one. The ones that were sort of obvious to me, because that was my reason one of the big things for me was this shift to renewables and climate change. So I took a lot of energy classes across the street. So in the Stanford University, not the business school. That's obviously been a huge helping factor in just being knowledgeable about the space that I wanted to enter. Also helped me understand that I personally wasn't going to become as a business undergrad. I personally wasn't going to become an engineer or a master's in engineering, but I got enough knowledge out of it to know that I had a place in that world, and I could sort of talk to the topics. Other GSB classes that really stuck with me were around HR and leadership, and not so much the ones that I knew were going to be great that everybody talks about, but also the ones that are a little bit more tangible and hands-on. There was something, I don't know, the colloquial term was hiring and firing, really hands-on class that I think about every single time I have a sort of managerial topic coming up. Acting with power was a surprising one that really helped me come out of my shell and try a different leadership style that I think about a lot. And weirdly, a statistics class that I also end up, every time somebody comes to me with some sort of fact or stat, or I read an article in the news, I question it in a very different way than I used to.
Great. Christina, how about you? Any favorite GSB courses or experiences that you continue to leverage today?
Yeah, so I actually, when I was at GSB, I took 2 sales classes because if there was one thing that felt very uncomfortable was negotiations, and I had this almost like chip on my shoulder. So I did the 2 classes, and after that I was like, this was great. I'll never get into like a sales role, and here I am, like, global commercial deliverer. And it's funny because I go back to those classes every day, as in like, beyond the tools that you could think like, well, maybe I can get them in, there's plenty of sales classes and so on. It was more like the approach in which those tools were offered to us, and so a lot of live sort of like cases and simulations, and then similarly I took classes like managing difficult conversations, managing growing enterprises, where again, it's like you prepare a case, you're called out and you have to like basically act pretty much and be ready and on the moment. And, in the role that I have, sitting at the negotiation table with, counterparts, lawyers, and everything is in the moment. I've gone so much back to it. I've written back to professors, telling them about something that had happened and what was their perspective. So, definitely helpful, probably in the most unexpected way, because I didn't think I was going to get a role similar to those classes. But yeah, it's been great.
This next question I'll have Maxime start with, but anyone else who wants to chime in is more than welcome to. What advice would you give to someone who would like to go to Europe directly after the Stanford GSB?
I think Sita covered that a little bit already. It also worked out in my situation. I think Sita mentioned about networking prior to GSB. So basically, if you consider such an option to come back to Europe and or your home country, anywhere in the world, it's worth talking to people before GSB, during summer breaks, winter breaks, and just staying in touch with people helps a lot. Just understand what's going on their side, both like within your friends community, your previous employers. Just being in the loop and understand what's going on helps a lot. And besides that, I'm not sure how it works out in other countries. In Moscow, it was really a close community of the applicants applying for the major US Graduate School of Businesses, MBA programs. And we actually got friends, and I've got a lot of friends during that period. We just applied together to different universities, and like I got admitted to Stanford, somebody got admitted to other great universities, and we came back, and we just our kids are friends now, and it's just fun just talking to the people who share the same ideas and have the same like backgrounds. And also I also did this tour among different business schools prior to my application, and a few of the Russian guys who studied at Harvard, at Wharton, and Chicago at that time, who at Stanford obviously, who were like 1-2 years prior to my graduation, they also became friends of mine since that trip. So there's one piece of advice: just network a lot within this community prior and during GSBs. And the second one, I personally believe that Stanford has great resources, although I truly, at least 15 years ago, it was the case that I relied more on myself rather than on like official venues. If I would love to work back in the home country in Russia. And I definitely decided that I graduated first and then come back and then start looking for a job rather than trying to do both, like partying during the day, working during the night, trying to find a job during like summer window, or trying to find a job during morning hours. It doesn't work out. So I prefer just to focus more on understanding the classes and like learning something, talking and like partying with my friends during GSBs. And then I graduated, come back, and then I started actually looking for a new job, like seriously.
Anyone else have advice? Christina? Yeah,
I can jump in. So I actually did look into moving to Europe right after GSB. And so I took, through the summer, in between the 2 years, the opportunity to come to London for a week. Obviously, I'd done sort of like a bit of prep work up front, a bit like, maybe what industries. And it was very, by the way, like, it's not that I had very clear, like, it has to be consumer or tech. Like, I was very sort of like wide spectrum of things that I saw myself doing, because also that's what you do an MBA for, sort of like understanding that out. So my advice would be start early and, the schedule is busy at the GSV, but there's always, that 1 week or, and you don't even have to be in the place, but just like allocate time early enough. And I did keep in touch with the alumni that I had pinged during that summer, because I think one thing to remember is that like alumni are like people, and they're very nice people, and they like to stay in touch. Like you're not just simply asking them for a job, you're making a human connection. So I found that a lot of the alumni I stayed in touch with. And then I actually quote unquote use them, leverage them as I was deciding whether I wanted to go back immediately or not, in sort of like understanding, what was best for me. And so I ended up taking a job in the US, so I didn't move straight after. But when I then was back in London, it took me 2 weeks to find a new job, and I had like plenty of opportunities. So it was very much like, yeah, I guess I would say start early. You don't have to go to them and say you're 100% sure you're going to move to Europe. Like, be transparent. People are not expecting you to, take any decision during your first year. And so that gives you a lot of freedom, I think, in shaping a bit your career after GSB.
Great, thank you. Well, many of your responses have addressed some of the questions that we have from our audience, but I want to specifically dive into some of those now that are open for anyone to answer. We have a question here of, it's sort of twofold. What was the most unexpected or impactful experience during your time at Stanford? And maybe what was one of the more challenging experiences? So who would like to tackle one of those?
I can say in terms of unexpected, if somebody then wants to take the next one. There's touchy-feely as a class, which which Stanford is very famous for. And there are a lot of people who go to Stanford and who are just 100% sure they would participate in that class. And that's one of the big events of their Stanford program. I was not on that line of thinking. I was more on the line of thinking of, if everybody does it, I will not. So I didn't take it until the end, actually, when I had a little bit of fear of missing out in the last semester, and I registered just in case there was something important happening there. And although I resisted through the first classes where I was still trying to get convinced about the idea, I have to say, for me, and very surprisingly, it was one of the best experiences I've done, not only at Stanford, but also I would say beyond Stanford. The level of connection, human connection. So it's not really about content, it's really about relationship. The level of human connection that we experienced during that class, and the conversations we managed to have on a person-to-person basis, trying to understand, as Stefan was saying, how you come across and how others see you, which you maybe not have considered until now because you never just thought about it. This I found the most, I have to say, after the 2 years, the most powerful and unexpected event for me, at least from the many classes that I took at the GSB.
Any other unexpected surprises or impactful experiences folks want to highlight?
I think I've got 3 unexpected surprises that I would probably share with you. First, I didn't expect such a beautiful nature around the Stanford University, and just going out in the woods and like Tahoe Lake and the mountains and ocean in close proximity, that definitely made difference for me and for my family. And the second one, I would say that I came with a son of mine and my spouse to campus, and I didn't expect kindergarten and schools of such a high quality there. I definitely recommend for those who would come with families to consider that option, like on the Stanford campus per se. And the third, there are so many things happening, and we were told when we approached, when we came on the first day, that it is really important for us to kind of to build the skill how to manage our schedule right, both including sleeping and like networking, and so many clubs, so many classes, so many great people you want to talk to. it's like drinking from fire hose, I would say. And it's definitely one of the first abilities I had to manage in order to survive, basically. I didn't expect that. But it helped a lot after graduation as well.
I can quickly jump in. Before the GSB, my life was pretty like, straight lined, right? Like I did like economics undergrad, I, had a company and things like this. And so in terms of unexpected, impactful things, I was very hesitant to take kind of like strange classes that didn't just check off my boxes of this is, has a 101 correlation to make me a better, whatever, manager, leader, or something like this. The best class, in my opinion, was a mindfulness class that I took. I don't even know what department, it wasn't the GSB. I went in there on the advice of my wife, who said, you should really do this. And I said, okay, when will I ever do this other than now? And Sita knows me well, that's why she's laughing. And I loved it. And if there's one piece of advice, and I don't know if this is my place to give you advice now, but I would drop your expectations and not just focus on the things that you think have a one-on-one correlation to making you more successful, whatever your goal is, richer, more powerful. Like, take those 2 years and literally, pump the brakes for just 1 second. Read the whatever 100 electives, especially in the second year, that you can take, and just take some crazy ones that just interest you. And what's the worst thing that can happen to you? You go to 2 classes and then you just don't go for the rest of the semester, And I wish I would have done a lot more of that. And in terms of the challenge, that is kind of like also the challenge, right? Because once you start doing that, there aren't going to be 2 classes that you're kind of interested in. There's going to be 25, and it's 25 a semester, So you have to just be okay with saying, look, like I'd love to, or I'm kind of interested in these 25, but I can only do 2 because otherwise my schedule is so crazy that I'm missing out on a million other things.
Any other challenging experiences during your time at Stanford?
I think the challenge is always not being dragged by what a lot of people do, or like what we were just talking about, sort of like what you think is going to be good for you and for your career, and sort of like staying grounded in what you're trying to achieve. And that also becomes sometimes very sort of like confused and foggy. And so it's a lot. At the time, I felt that I was almost sort of like getting lost and not getting the most out of it. And then now, a couple of years out, I actually realized that that's actually the process you're meant to go through. Like, you don't go to the GSB because you have it all clear. If anything, it's an opportunity to like admit that not everything is super clear. Also, life doesn't go always as you've planned it. So there's that element, and that becomes even more true as you graduate and life moves on for a lot of your classmates. And so I think the challenge in the moment is always sort of like being mindful of that, and not getting scared of not starting doubting yourself that maybe you're not doing enough or too much. And they always say you can either sleep and not go to the party, or finish your assignments and get a good grade, or go to class. It's just like there's too much to do that sometimes it gets overwhelming.
This next question, maybe Sita, I'll have you start. And Stefan, you might have a perspective too, having spent, I think you said 17 years in the US, but we're seeing some questions from panelists. If you are not originally a European citizen, or if you're coming from another part of the world and want to transition to Europe, is that possible? And maybe you can even reflect, all of you, on your peers and your colleagues and your classmates, in your various home countries. Do you see non-European citizens who are now currently working in Europe, who are GSB grads. And Sita, I called on you because of your personal connection there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. This was my unexpected. I didn't want to put it in the challenge or unexpected thing, but I met my husband at the GSB, who's an American. I thought I wanted to come back to Europe after the GSB. Met this American guy. Unexpected, not what I had planned. The way he did it was he had worked in the summer internship. He worked for a US-based startup in product, and they were just in the process of expanding to Europe. And he basically got an offer from them for the Silicon Valley office, but then managed to transfer that over to the UK. So they were sponsoring him. So that's one of the paths that I know pretty well. Obviously, we've since got married, so that's another thing that is sometimes possible and sometimes obviously not. The other thing that he also did, so I mentioned that I had an offer from a consulting firm that I had worked with. So we tried Amsterdam over the summer, by the way, and then decided we wanted to move to London. So there was another little thing there. Obviously, try whatever you can, but consulting is obviously has global recruiting, and they obviously know how to do all of the visa things. So that's a fairly safe one, I would say. You can even, do an internship in one city, get an offer, transfer that offer, or apply directly with the office that you want to go to. So that's how I went to Amsterdam, and we would have been able to go to London with that as well. Other friends, unfortunately, I'm aware of a few of our classmates who stayed in the US but didn't, like in the former president's era, didn't manage to quite stay longer. Some of them have come to Europe. I don't know exactly the visa situation, but it seemed to be significantly easier, obviously, than staying in the US at the time. I think hopefully that'll loosen up in the future. But those are the things I can think of right now.
And do any
I
of
could
it?
just add like one or two more things. I mean, apart from immigration things, right, which I don't know anything about how difficult that is, but I think, like Sita said, for sure, big companies, right, are always a good starting point. And I can just talk for, little Munich, as my wife calls it. She's from New York, so it's very little to her. But even there, right, there's plenty of English-speaking opportunities as well. So that's clearly not an issue in London or any of the other bigger cities. But so even the language thing, I think, because that's a big one for a lot of people, you can do without. I mean, my wife did not speak a word of German when we moved, and she now speaks some. But I don't think that should be a huge concern. But I would come back to the alumni, right, as the first starting point. I mean, there's plenty of alumni in whatever important, powerful positions in virtually every big city. So if there's a larger city that you're interested in, or a company you're interested in, right, with somebody from another office, I would start there. And I'm sure, if you're serious about wanting to move to Europe, there's opportunities that the Stanford Network can help identify together with you, and you can then make the move. I mean, we have several, just coming back to this tribe that Sita was talking about earlier, our little 10-person group here in Europe. There are Americans, several Americans on it that, moved to Europe and are now still here and part of our group. So it's, it's definitely a longer term alternative also for people.
Great. We have a question here from an audience member. Obviously, there are a number of wonderful European business schools as well. I don't know if any of you were considering those, but what are the things that you felt you could only learn doing your MBA in the US, or maybe the GSB in particular?
I'll just,
go ahead,
sorry.
Go ahead. Go.
Okay, I'll quickly do mine. This was the reason for me to decide to go to Stanford. So I visited a couple different schools, and the one thing for me is that at Stanford, you have the protagonist of the case sitting there in front of you and telling you the story and all of the backstory behind it. And that to me was just I can read a case at home, I can think about what I would do, and I could maybe discuss it with some smart people, but hearing from the founder or something about the struggle they were facing and what really went on behind the scenes, the things that they maybe didn't necessarily put in the case, that's the kind of learning where I thought, I can only get that here. Like this is Silicon Valley. Like a lot of the alums are still around. That just blew my mind.
I think to add on that, sorry, Patricia, but it took a class in which they invited, so there were two co-founders that started a company, then they separated, not in sort of like great terms, and the professor invites both of them into different days, and you hear both bells, which is it almost gets uncomfortable for the class to hear, right? Because it's you hear one and then you feel like you're on their side, and then you go and you hear the other one, and it's just I think I agree. It's one of the elements that made me pick Stanford. The other one for me was I wanted to get a bit of the Silicon Valley experience, which in reality for me meant do something that I'd never done. I started a shoe company while at Stanford, and my family is absolutely not entrepreneurial, so for me it was going way out of my comfort zone. And then in Silicon Valley there were all these people so excited about me and my business. But yeah, the case was definitely one of the big things for me that made me pick Stanford.
Patricia.
So for me, so the MBA is either 1 year or 2 year program, so it's quite a long time, and I felt it was a long time to not work actually, and not make a professional career. So I wanted to make the best out of it. And for me, going to the US, especially going to Stanford and Silicon Valley, also meant the cultural experience. So it's one thing to get the class and to understand your statistical concepts and even the case and discuss it, but it's another thing to experience how life is in Silicon Valley, how people think, how people behave, breathe. There's a lot of different elements that are subjective, that you don't really measure, are not written on paper, that I would not have gotten if I would not have gone to Stanford. And for me, that was one of the key elements in taking the decision to really have this comprehensive experience. So not only classes, but going beyond that.
Great, thank you. Well, I do want to be mindful of the time, as I know we're coming up on our end point here. Again, you'll see another poll pop up momentarily, and we'd love to get your input there. I want to absolutely thank all of our panelists for sharing your experiences today, both about your time at the GSB as well as your time now currently in Europe. I think it was very, very helpful to hear about that transition and how you made that transition. For all of our attendees today, we hope that this is just the start of your Stanford MBA journey, and a wonderful way to continue that journey is through a site called mystanford.mba. Please check this out if you haven't already. There's an opportunity to create your own personalized dashboard there. It will tee up clubs and courses that might be of interest to you, student or alumni profiles that might resonate with you. If you start an application, you can track your application progress there, and it will also suggest other events that might be of interest to you, such as the one today. So again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to all of our attendees. I hope you've enjoyed today's session, and best of luck in your MBA journey.